Hello, hello, Givebutter Fam, Givebutter Fam. I am so excited to see everybody. See, we had to start the webinar today with feeling hot, 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 okay? We had to start because I want y'all to burn up and not burn out, okay, somebody? So while you guys are joining in, please let me know your name, where you're calling from, and one word to describe your state today. So your name, where you're calling from, and one word to describe your state. And make sure you hit to everyone so we know and you can message everybody who's here in the call, okay? Your name, where you're calling from, and one word to describe your state. Gina, come on, Gina, welcome. Hey, Megan. Oh, Megan is ready. I love that. I love that. Okay, Gina's feeling hot. Come on, somebody. Me too. I never thought I would say that because I'm in Michigan and I'm like, it's hot? It's always been cold. Lori, come on, Lori. Lori's from North Carolina. Hello, hello. Ashley's here. Taylor's feeling full. I know that feeling. Come on, somebody. I love it. Becky's feeling hopeful. Me too. Lori's feeling tired. I'm with you. I feel that as well. Jose, Florida, sunshine. I love it. I love it. Delisa from Baltimore, Maryland. Delisa, I lived in Baltimore for like so long. So welcome. Lisa from Kansas City. Come on, somebody. Maggie, it's windy where you're at. Okay, I wish I had some wind. Bring that wind over here, okay? Juliana, looking forward to this. I love it. Patrick is here. He's feeling cool. I love it. Tiffany from Memphis is feeling busy. I know that feeling. Adrian, okay, come on, Adrian. You're feeling chilling out in Colorado. I love it. I love it. Well, y'all, I am so excited to be chatting with you guys. I'm so happy to have you here. This is always one of my biggest privileges to be able to share this time with you guys, especially because we're all busy. We're fundraisers, we're professionals, and I get it. So we are going to jump right in. So if you guys don't already know, my name is Floyd Jones. I think they call me the hostess with the most. Actually, the host with the most. For the host who does the most, who knows? But I'm Floyd. I'm calling from Detroit, Michigan. I am the community and partnerships lead here at Givebutter. I love working with grassroots organizations, okay? I love being in the trenches. I love helping build fundraising strategy. And I'm also a musician, so you might hear me break out. You always see me dance in the beginning, but maybe one of these days I'll break out in song. We'll see. Let's jump right into our agenda. So obviously we have our welcome and introductions. I'm super excited to get to see all the people calling from all across the country. We're gonna do some introductions. And I'm so excited because we're gonna share a little bit, some stories. We have a little story time. We're gonna do some roundtable discussion. So you all submitted some amazing questions and we are gonna dig deep into those today. We're gonna have some live Q&A and then we are gonna do a quick reminder and wrap up session. But first, some housekeeping notes. Use the Q&A. One thing I love about our Givebutter fam here is we love to chat. We love to use the chat. We love to share emojis. And you already know me. I'm going to be talking and asking y'all to give me some and feels that in the chat. When you're using the Q&A for a specific question, please submit it via the Q&A feature. Again, comment, use emojis. I love engagement. I love connecting with you guys. I love hearing how things are going. If something resonates for you all today, let me know in that chat. Obviously, keep the chat kind and respectful. And then before sending a message in the chat, make sure you're hitting to everyone, okay? Not just the host and panelists, not just to me, although I love when y'all message me and let me know great things, but make sure you're using the chat and hitting to everyone, okay? And then if you're in the Facebook fam, we have 727 members in the Facebook fam, okay? So if you're not in there, y'all need to get in there, okay? But if you are in, I want you to chat, I'm in the chat. I want to see who's here, who's actually in here. Ashley's in, Kylie's in, come on, Kylie. Tiffany's in, I love it, I love it. Brittany's in, come on, somebody. Who else is in? Julie's in, Adrian's in. I love it, I love it, I love it. So yes, if you are not in the Facebook fam, make sure you join. Someone from our team is going to drop the link to get involved as well, okay? Before we get started, I want to drop a little poll. Okay, I want to see from each and every one of you, what is your current relationship with burnout right now? Okay, what is your relationship to burnout right now? So are you browsing? I'm good. You're just here for the comments. You're feeling great. I'm brewing. I'm fine, but I'm worried about someone else. Baking. I'm a little stressed, but mostly okay. Broiling. I'm definitely overwhelmed and burnt out. Okay, the fire's burning. You already burnt to a crisp. I'm overworked, overwhelmed, overloaded. Where are you at in this list currently? We want to know, we want to see, what is your current relationship to burnout? Few more seconds here. All right, let's see. So a lot of people baking, I'm a little stressed, but mostly okay. I love that. One of the things that we're going to talk about a lot throughout this session today is being able to be aware, right? Having awareness, being actively conscious in where you're at in your journey, right? So that we can beat burnout before it even begins. Come on, alliteration, but it's true. We want to be able to beat burnout before it begins. And so I'm so excited to see where everyone is at. And also, we want to give honor to the people who are feeling overwhelmed and the people who are already feeling that they're burnt out, okay? So before we get started, I want everyone to take a deep breath, okay? And release it. And we are going to jump into a little bit of story time, okay? So I want to first start with a little bit sharing my story into fundraising, okay? So this is my favorite group in the whole wide world. They're called the Boko Moso Youth Foundation, and they are based in Winterveld, South Africa. So this group and this organization really started my journey in fundraising. On the left-hand side, I went to their concert in Washington, D.C., and it completely changed my life. I am, like you guys know, I'm a musician, but I'm also from West Africa. My family is from Sierra Leone, West Africa. And so I love being able to be connected to just the singing, the rawness, the emotion, and the culture of different African diasporas. And so that concert completely changed my life. When they were dancing, I was dancing with them. When they were singing, I was hitting my little 2 notes in the back. And that really got me on my journey. And so the next year later, actually, the picture on the right was actually a picture of me in South Africa. I ended up spending about a month with the center, and every single morning we would sing songs, we would dance, we would write poetry. We didn't really necessarily call it art therapy at the time, but that was essentially what we were doing. And something tugged on my heartstrings, and so I ended up spending even more time in South Africa. In this next slide, you'll see me all throughout. I was jumping for joy on the left-hand side. I was living my best life. I was soaking in the South African sun on that right side on a safari, and really taking it in. And I had a lot of time to really reflect on that trip and realize that, hey, I want to come back and I want to help serve. So when I got back to the States, one of the things that I did was I helped them organize a US tour. And that tour ended up raising over $300,000 for the organization. So they were able to use all the funding that they had on that tour to keep the center alive and active. And one of the things that I realized was that, hey, this is the power of collective action. When people come together, there can be real and lasting change. And so that kind of got me on my fundraising kick. I signed up for jobs that helped me be able to fundraise. I organized events at the National Geographic Museum in DC. I organized a tour choir. I did all these different amazing fundraising initiatives. But one of the things that I didn't realize, and we'll notice in the next slide, I'm sorry, is that I started putting the mission of these organizations over myself. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of us as fundraisers can easily do. At least I did at the time. I was so committed to the mission. I was so committed to fundraising. I was so committed to doing the thing, not just with this organization, but every other organization that I signed up for and I ended up working with. And I kept going hard. I chose jobs, I took on tasks, and I really put the mission above myself. But how could I not? In the next slide, you're going to see that I was actually able to give speeches. I was able to go on tours. I was able to do really amazing, unique things. And I easily conflated who I was with what I did. Okay. And I didn't realize that my identity became wrapped up in what I did. And I wasn't being proactive enough to actually take a pause and say, wait, what do I want? right? People were asking, what makes you happy? And I was like, of course it's my job. Like, of course it's the things that I do. But I didn't take a moment to actually say, no, what do I want as Floyd? What makes Floyd happy? And I think that in this next slide, one of the things that I realized, Taylor asked, are you a 3 on the Enneagram? Yes, I am. You already know me, Taylor. But one of the things that I realized is that I had a lack of boundaries. And one of the things that I quickly realized is that you need to build boundaries with yourself for yourself, right? You need to build boundaries with yourself for yourself. We always talk about boundaries in work, boundaries with other people, but what about the boundaries with ourselves? How are we telling ourselves, hey, maybe this isn't going to properly serve you right now? How are we going to tell ourselves, hey, maybe this isn't actually going to get you to where you want to be, right? And so I had to learn the hard way. But once I did, I actually started realizing my journey, and I was able to actually flourish from that point. So that actually sets the tone for the rest of today's session. We are going to be talking about burnout and how to be able to understand it before it gets there, right? And how we get there. And so I want to bring up our first amazing guest. It's Nikki Levett. So Nikki is from Memphis, Tennessee. She's the founder of Nspired Brands. She helps small teams and nonprofits prioritize, automate, and delegate their work. And fun fact is that she just recently took up boxing. Okay, come on, somebody. So I am so excited to have Nikki. She's going to share a little bit of her story with burnout and giving you all some tips as well. So will you all help me bring up Nikki?
Hey everybody, I'm just so excited to be here with you guys today. Floyd, your story is incredible. Like, I loved every photo and I just loved like hearing your journey. And thank you for those tips about boundaries. I'm still working on my boundaries. And so those are really, really good notes. And also what you said about identifying with your job, you identify with your job. And I think a lot of us struggle with that. So I thank you so much for your story. It was awesome. I want to jump right in and jump into my story. And hopefully, as I share my story today, you guys will get some tips on how stress is affecting you and how to keep from burning out. So I hope you get some takeaways and stuff too for immediate relief. Well, I got my start in nonprofit by leaving corporate marketing to build student mentor programs. And full circle, I'm now a nonprofit marketing and fundraising consultant. I've worked with some really great orgs, as you can see here, to build awareness, drive donations, and recruit volunteers. And I'm super proud of the numbers that are up and the impact that I've been blessed to make in Memphis and beyond. But there were challenges, and that's the next slide. After 8 years of self-sacrifices, no vacations, and just plain unhealthy habits, I ended up with habitual burnout, and I had to leave nonprofits for 2 years to recover. Now, when you look at these stages of burnouts, there were warning signs, there were red flags, but I would get a little rest, I would get motivated, or I would completely deny or hide that I was stressed to the max until I could physically no longer go on. And so I had to take off to get medical care, and that's when I got serious about my burnout recovery. And in the next slide, you'll see some of the choices that I now have to make on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. These are the numbers that I'm super proud of now. As a matter of fact, if I don't do these numbers, the numbers from the other slide won't happen anymore. And that was the reality that I had to accept. The other thing is I started to share my story. And as I did that, there was no more shame, no more guilt, no more imposter syndrome, no more isolation, which all comes when you're facing burnout. Burnout was my default setting. And the only way that I can stay free is if I keep these numbers. So I'm a high achiever and I like meeting goals. These are my new goals and I'm very intentional about them. So the next slide. Now my personal mission is to serve the nonprofit community with stress management tools and burnout support. So during the pandemic, a lot of my nonprofit friends were chronically stressed or burning out. And so I started tech support, and 2 simple words changed everything for me. And it just started this like mission of care, and that's housework. I just started texting my friends housework, and they started replying back and just really being honest and transparent and authentic. And I just knew that this is what I was supposed to be doing. So I do that now on my website, nikkilevett.com. There's lots of free tools and stuff for you there. So Here's what I wish that someone would have told me as I was working and committed to mission and out there in the community, just hyping it up, right? I wish someone had told me that if you minimize and manage stress at the onset, you will never be at risk of burnout because you will have your stress system down pat. And when stress arises, you'll have already your quick tools and tips and resources to go ahead and minimize and manage that so you can keep on doing the good work that you do. Next slide. So let's talk about minimizing that stress, right? If you've been burnt out or if you know somebody that's burnt out, you've seen the effects of overwork, overwhelm, and overload. It's not a fun place to be. You feel trapped, you feel isolated, you feel alone, you just feel exhausted, right? And I wanted to know what those stresses were. And a lot of stuff that I'm going to share with you guys today, I'm thankful for my therapist that helped me to kind of get down to the depths, the root of my stress and the root of my causes. I was a self-care junkie. Like I loved the self-care stuff, but it kind of felt like a Band-Aid until I was able to go deeper and really get to the root of my stuff. The first is high stress output. It means that you're working too hard on too many things for too long, right? I'll give you the spoiler alert. Each one of these sections has 3 sections. If you're 3 out of 3, you're probably either chronically stressed or headed for burnout. 2 out of 3, you're faking a little bit, 1 out of 3 is kind of where you want to be. It's kind of a good checkpoint. And so the second one is high stress input. That's the expectation, obligations, and responsibility that comes with the kind of work that we do. Fundraising is no joke. It's meant for warriors. And when you are in this work, there are lots of expectations from all different places, especially the ones we place on ourselves. There's this sense of obligation, this commitment to do the things that we say that we're going to do for the people in our community, and then the responsibility, the outcomes, and the impact of our work. And last, high stress ratio, right? How many of you guys are feeling more than one role right now, right? Every time I meet somebody and I look at their credentials and they've got a hybrid title, and that happens a lot with fundraisers. You're the communications and development or marketing and development. It means added expectation, obligations, and responsibilities with every role that you're taking on. Sometimes what also comes with those roles is visibility. If you are the face of your org, you're out there and you're the chief advocate for your org, and you're out there carrying your cause in the community, visibility also adds stress because with that comes this kind of demand for your availability, right? People want to connect, they want to follow up. Sometimes people want to collaborate, and that's all things added to your plate. So next slide, we'll take a look at the effects of overwork, overwhelm, and overload. This is why burnout is so crazy, because it hits you from every side. It's mental, it's emotional, it's physical. This is just a list of some of the symptoms that you feel when you're chronically stressed or you're burnt out. But there's hope. And those 3 little bullets there in the gray can help you fight overwork, fight overwhelm, and fight overload. The first is boundaries, breaks, and buffers, right? Boundaries we get, breaks we should give, but we don't often take them. Buffers are the 15 to 10 minute buffers you put in your schedule to help you really process your last meeting or your last task before you jump into the next one. That's one of my favorites. It's helped me out a ton. And with overwhelm, that feeling that you've just got so much going on, I love a good 90s reference. Any different world friends out there? Hello, Whitley Gilbert. I owe her. Okay, relax, relate, release. Oh my gosh, she spoke a whole word. And it does make sense. You've got to find ways that you relax, and it's different for everybody. Being in nature kind of was maybe not so relaxing for me. I'm kind of weird with bugs and stuff like that, but just driving in my car with music, that's my jam, right? Literally. So you have to find out what relaxes you. You have to find ways to relate with others in community and people that are going through what you're going through, so you guys can talk around shared experience and then release. Find ways to literally release some of the tension, but also release the work. Find ways to delegate, collaborate, and automate, right? And the last tips for that, for overload is literally when your body can't take anymore. And for a lot of us that are dealing with stress or burnout, that's when we hit a wall, right? We can hype ourselves up mentally. we can go and take an attitude adjustment, but when your body gives out, it's done, right? So you want to eat, you want to exercise, you want to energize. Energize is about sleep. It's about managing your energy, how much energy you're putting in tasks and that sort of thing. So next slide.
Really quick, Nikki, I didn't want to interrupt, but one thing that you said that was so poignant that really stuck out to me was the idea of visibility, right? Especially if you're in a fundraising role and your visibility levels going up and then your availability kind of going down, right? One of the things that I noticed in our poll earlier was that, maybe right now is kind of a down season at work, right? Maybe right now it's not a fundraising season, but what happens when we get to the end of the year and we're dealing with fundraising campaigns and we're dealing with board members, right? And you got to pull together all the different reports and all of a sudden everybody wants to know when was the last thank you note sent, and then you got to call all the people, the big donors and schedule dinners with them and whatnot. How do you manage in real time, right? Because I think that we don't talk a lot about the expectations that we as fundraisers have to face. So how do you manage these things in real time?
Absolutely be intentional about your breaks. Absolutely be intentional about your boundaries, and absolutely create as many buffers in your day as you possibly can. It is going to save you. End of year fundraising is peak stress season for us. We are on the go. We are out there getting it. And also pack healthy snacks with you. You need granola bars. You need bottles of water. You need things that are going to fuel and nourish you so that you can keep going. And then make the end of your day a ritual. When you get home, do nothing. Netflix and chill. Get you something good to eat, like literally nourish yourself, comfort yourself, care for yourself, because you've got to have enough in your reserves to get back out there the next day.
I love that the idea of it's impossible to fill the cup of anybody else unless your cup is full first, right?
Exactly. Feel that. So I'm gonna blaze through these next slides because we tackled like the meat of it. But like managing stress, it comes down, and these were my turning points as I was going through therapy and coaching. It was the details and dynamics, my energy and emotions, and you guys, this last one, it really blew my mind. The way that we're wired and our work ethic, right? These are the things that create like those triggers for us. And so when you think about it, culture and capacity, where you work and what you do at work, like the sense of urgency to meet goals and advance mission at work is going to contribute to your level of stress. How you manage your schedules and your task list, experiences and exposure. Guys, we do some tough work out here in the world, and we're advocating for people that are really going through some significant challenges and trauma in life. And a lot of times we embrace their stories, right? Just in compassion, and that's trauma for us. Then we also have life challenges and personal and professional failures that we have to process and keep going, right? And then there are the triggers and the treasures. There's the things that just are innate to us, our personality traits, our values, and our beliefs. Next slide. And so you'll see here the dynamics and details, the energy and emotions, the wiring and work ethic. You guys, let me tell you, one of my favorite on this slide was my origin work story and my ethics, my work ethics, my beliefs about work. Let me tell you something. At 16, I got a marketing internship and I started getting out of school early. I got on-the-job credit to get out of high school early and go to work. You guessed it, high achieving, people pleasing, workaholic, all started from there. And I learned that hard work pays off. I was getting college credit, so I was getting ahead. I became like, over the years, I had 2 internships in college. Like I was that girl. I became like the ambassador for hustle culture. I'm from Memphis. We're all about the grit and grind, the hustle, right? So I embraced all of these things. My parents, both workaholics, both hard workers, I took on a lot of their ethics, and I had to undo a lot of that stuff to be able to get to a healthy place. And that's kind of the 3 R's that you see there. Sometimes you have to rework the way you work. You have to be able to be resilient and recover when things don't go as you planned. And then you've got to be able to reframe some of those things that are innate to you that are contributing to your stress. Next slide. And here's why. So that you can have impact in the moments that matter. What are the moments that matter? There are 3 top chief high priority things that you want to minimize and manage stress. So you'll have energy to do these things. It's when you're carrying the cause. in your community. It's when you're creating connection. It's when you're coaching conversion. Those are the top 3 things that as fundraisers and as nonprofit warriors that we do, right? And stress affects all 3. Stress affects how empathetic we are, how engaging we are, and how effective we are. And I don't want that for you. I want you to thrive and shine and do the good work that you are purposed to do. And that is why, drum roll, my gift to you is my stressless system. I'm excited to give this to you guys, and it's jam-packed with a lot of the stuff that we saw on the slides today. We go deeper into that. I'm loving the stress diary and the audio course, which means you get to do this on your commute, when you go take a walk, on one of your work breaks, right? Because you're going to start taking them breaks. And this is all stuff that's going to support you after today to help you come up with your own personal stress management system, because stress hits each of us differently. That means that our stress relief systems will all be different. So I hope you guys enjoy that. And thank you guys for letting me share my story today.
Nikki, that was amazing. Does this resonate with anybody? Are y'all getting these tips, y'all? Let us know in the chat. We are so grateful, especially for that stress less kit. And I hope you guys know we're going to send this all via email to you when this session is over. Thank you so much, Nikki, for all of that. We're going to bring you right back up for the Q&A, okay? Y'all, I am so excited for our next guests. We have Becky and Jonathan who are going to be joining us as well. And I'm so excited to share a little bit more about them. So, okay, come on, somebody. Hello, Becky and Jonathan. So good to see you.
We just invited ourselves up. Thank you.
I love it. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Y'all, if you guys aren't familiar with the We Are For Good podcast, I just felt that right here in my spirit. Just first of all, saying it, because I felt it. You are for good. Okay, you live and embody that title. Come on, somebody. But Becky and Jonathan both are from Oklahoma City. They are both certified fundraising professionals. They are the founders of We Are For Good. A fun fact about Becky is that she's 4th generation Italian American and makes a mean fettuccine alfredo. Fun fact for me, okay, I know I already gave a fun fact, but everyone, you know that question when people ask, okay, what's your last meal? I always say it's fettuccine alfredo. So the fact is, I'm coming to Oklahoma.
Becky will make it.
Right.
She will make the pasta.
That'll reduce my stress. And then John and his wife, Candace, have 2 sets of twins. And y'all, they are adorable. Okay. I just gotta let you know they're adorable. But we are going to continue in this stride of talking about burnout and some of the top tips that y'all have. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you 2.
Okay, the deck has been stacked to follow Floyd and Nikki, but so much gratitude. I mean, we've already gotten so much that I'm taking notes on this random envelope that's on my desk because I've seen and spoken to from all the content that's been shared. So thank you for this so much.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming in and really thank you for pouring into yourself, making time for this. I mean, imposter syndrome raging after following Nikki right now, who is just on fire with bringing vulnerability and authenticity in. And I just think it's so funny to me that I have this picture that I have this love-hate relationship with up on the screen, because John and I have spent our entire lives in the nonprofit sector, from everywhere from marketing, we're marketers disguised as fundraisers, to leading annual giving teams. I was a major gifts officer. And just after 20 years, you all know, you've been there. There is a grind and there is an apex where you just hit the way that our culture in this sector is stacked up to just really add too much to our plate. And if you are like, I love Floyd bringing out the Enneagram 3, I'm Enneagram 2, I think, which is the helper. And when you are 9. Someone, John, peacemaker, when you are constantly pouring into other people, you're probably not pouring into yourself. And the reason I shared this photo is because I experienced a complete and total nervous breakdown in 2019, where I had just had way too much of the nonprofit sector coming into my life. There were none of those things that Nikki was talking about in my life in terms of boundaries and socializing what I was feeling and getting help and asking for help. And I just started, and I just want to share a little bit of the story because I just did not feel well. And that's where that story started. And it was 6 months of visiting my doctor saying, what is this? And is it MS? Is it a tumor? We always go to tumors. Why do we always go to tumors? And at the end of the day, I ended up on my couch on a Sunday morning. I had a notebook in my hand, in my lap, and I was studying for the CFRE, which was going to happen in 2 days. And I remember this absolute feeling of dread that came over me. And I wasn't sure what was happening. And I remember looking down at my meal, which was my favorite meal, my favorite drink. I was listening to my favorite music. And I remember thinking, I don't like any of this. I don't want this drink. I don't want this food. And I just started sobbing. And the collapse and having an anxiety attack, I didn't even know what it was, led to this massive journey of me trying to figure out what had happened to me. How did I take on so much? How did I let the systems, the power dynamics, the essence and nuance of nonprofit come in to where I let it take over my life? And I was taking care of everybody else and I was not taking care of me. And the reason I share this photo is because this was the height of my, I say the height, the depth of my despair. When I was pulling out of depression, I was trying to work through what is the medication that I need to get on. I was starting to see a therapist, and you can see in my eyes a sort of hollow, scared to death feeling. These are like my family photos. And when I look at this time in my life, I just think of how scared I was and floundering. And so I want to tell you all what I did, because I'm like, do as I say, not as I do. And it's very much, I poured into finding a therapist. I ended up having to get a psychiatrist so I could get some medication, which takes a while. I ended up doing, which I thought was one of the most reckless, brave things I ever did, was I took 3 months off and took short-term disability. And I will tell you, the first month that I was home, I did nothing. Like, I laid on my couch, I petted my dog. There he is. There's Dixie. And we went on walks. I was in nature. And it took a month for me to even clear my head. And then I took those next 2 months to start to build some healthier habits, starting to identify, why am I operating in this way? I shared my entire story on our podcast. You're welcome to go listen to it. It's very raw. It's very deep, but I share it, and I was really feeling empowered to share it and not shame-based, because there is no shame in this. This is such a stigmatized sort of topic. And that's also why I'm so grateful that you all are here. And we really need to pour into what are the tools that we need to kind of put, again, these boundaries around ourselves, because we joined this work for a reason. We want to be centered on that purpose. And when we take too much of it on, then we get the compassion fatigue, we get the burnout. And so I want to kick it to John, because John, I feel like, and I want to give John a little shout out, because if you are experiencing this, or if you see your friends experiencing this, John like always kind of dismisses this a little bit, but I want everyone to know what he did to care for me in that time as we were still working in our healthcare organization. He was working in the background, and he was taking projects off my plate without me knowing it. He was socializing. I think we need to give less to Becky. I think she needs a day off. When you socialize what's going on with you, you allow community to come in and lock arms with you and be a part of lifting you up. And I'm just so grateful for that. And that's something that you can do for somebody, or somebody can do for you. So don't be afraid to talk about it. John, I'll kick it to you.
Oh my gosh, it pains me to go back to that place. And I'm just so grateful for Becky's vulnerability around it, because to go back is painful to think about, but to see how Becky stepped out of it vibrantly has made it all so much more beautiful, and just kind of the journey that we can all kind of step forward together. So I feel like my story, I want to share a little bit about what it's like to support somebody going through it, because we all have it. And, we convene a lot of conversations on the podcast, and I got to give a shout out to Givebutter. Thank you for sponsoring a whole week where we talked about mental health, because we feel like it's the unaddressed elephant in the room, which is one reason why we've dedicated that. And we're dedicating ongoing space to just talking about it and creating it in the open. But it's something that's going to be an ongoing journey, and I want to give some thoughts around it for as a friend, how you can show up, but also as a leader. For those that are on the call that are at the leadership table, or maybe you're a founder or you're an executive director, this is a cultural thing. And I'm candidly working through this as a co-founder with Becky right now at We Are For Good too. But the systems and structures and the way that your team feels required to show up is the culture that you're creating for your organization. And there is an absolute reason why, we've spent a lot of this year talking about culture on the podcast. We actually believe in this very moment in time, the way you show up inside your organization is either going to attract or repel the donors that you want to cultivate, the relationships, the partnerships. And so when somebody is raising their hand and saying, hey, this is broken, like it is an absolute time as a leader to pause and like understand. And that's a slide I want to go to next, just to share this, because these conversations, I actually reordered them. If you can go to the blue slide, or gray slide, excuse me. Perfect. So the next one, bro, I'm sorry. The thing is, I'm the type of person that's wired, and I want to see some hands from other people out here that we're rewired that we want to always fix things. And that's the place that I want to go in my personal relationship with my wife, my friends, even with Becky. My default would be to go to a place that I just want to jump to solutions. Like, let's plan the brainstorming session to come up with ideas of how we're going to fix this. But a place that, we've really been challenged to start, and this was a really powerful quote that's hung with me that we shared on Mental Health Week, is that we must start and we listen for compassion, not to fix it. And like, there's just a space that you've got to create a moment and an opportunity to just listen as a human. And it's easy for me and Becky because we've been friends for, 20 years. And so that coming from that space is natural. But I think as a leader, if you're trying to create the culture and vibrant culture you want, you have to have this fundamental belief that if somebody's not okay, that's a byproduct of our culture, like we got to deal with that. And listening from compassion first, like, positions you in that way. And then next, I want to go to the blue slide, which you can see that one coming up, is that, we want to create these cultures that have the ability to have good well-being. And so it really is all connected. All these things that we talk about really do come back to how we show up as an organization, how we show up as people, and they're all interconnected. Becky's giving me credit to take stuff off her plate, but that was just practical, easy stuff that I could do as an ally and advocate. But the leader is really setting the tone of how do we end up in these structures in the first place? How are we showing up into an organization that people are at their fringes? Do we need to hire more staff? Do we need to say no to some projects or funders or make some of those harder conversations? And that's really the place that you got to show up. But as a friend, I think listening is the most important, powerful thing that you can do and what we all need in our life from a community perspective. And so we wanted to give you a tool. Again, we are not, I feel like if this is a commercial, there'd be like this giant disclaimer at the bottom, right? Because we're not mental health trained professionals. We curate and walk through conversations with incredibly smart people. But I wanted to share this tool that came through the podcast, which is this next slide with all of the text on it. This is a method called Get a Grip. And these amazing women formed this group called Cohort for Care. And they're coming at the idea of compassion fatigue and burnout with this really heart-wired, but real practical way of like, how do you process through this? First, how do you identify burnout? And some of the stuff that Nikki shared is like game changer for that, of recognizing it really early on. But going through this grip process, and I would encourage you to listen to this podcast to get their words, not just mine, it really does get to the root of it. Because in the same way, if we just jump to tactics, we're actually missing the very first stage of this, which is recognition, it's grief, it's going back and kind of giving space for that. And people like me that want to create peace, we want to like jump past that and get to solutions when we really need to create space to grieve and to work through that pain. But I love this step, remember, too, because this is really easy in our work, because a lot of us were drawn to this work because we love the sector. We love what impact we get to be part of. A lot of it's such of our own personal stories and our own reasons for why we're in these nonprofits. If we can tap back into that at the early stage, recognize grief, move into remember, and then start to investigate what is our thoughts, what are those thought patterns that we are activating on. Maybe if you believe something is a certain way, you need to really spend time to recognize, is that just how you're thinking, you're feeling, or is that really what it is? If it is, then that's what you're going to attack in this plan phase. And the plan phase is kind of coming up with the personal plan, taking these steps, and then throughout the whole thing, you're going to partner. And that's really this beautiful system that I think when you work, really healthy organizations come out of this. And I think it's been true, like we weren't following the GRIP plan, like talking through Becky's story, but it's true with anything that really has led to powerful change. It really starts with this place of vulnerability and then the things to follow it. And so we want to throw those resources at you. And again, Givebutter curated this week for us. So like huge hats off to Mr. Butter and the team here for doing this, but it's at weareforgood.com/mental health. There was 5 episodes that we talked really deeply about some of the things we went into today, including Becky's story in this session with Cohort for Care. and just pour in there, because the biggest thing is like, just don't sit with it. Like, sit with it to feel it and to understand it, but don't sit and feel like you're alone. And that was, I think, our heart in wanting to curate that people and you today on the call to not feel alone, that you need to reach out and to surround yourself with people that you can work through this and walk through this in life with. So that's kind of, where we'd like to plug in. I know we have some amazing questions. Anything you want to add, B, to this?
I just think, thank you all. I mean, pour into this. We've got books you can read. We've got podcasts you can listen to. There are resources that you can pour into to connect in community. And I think the biggest takeaway I would say is, don't go this alone. There's no pride. There's no stigma in this. In fact, there's quite the opposite. There is freedom and empowerment when you bring community into this journey, and you're actually going to change it and make it easier for the person who's coming behind you.
Yes.
I just feel like anytime y'all say anything, I'm just like, I can breathe again. Like, is this not good, y'all? Is this not good and so helpful? One of the things I was reflecting on when we were organizing, this session and thinking about who we wanted to have as guests and whatnot was, we at Givebutter, we really do care about the fundraiser. We care about the fundraiser, right? We are a platform for fundraising, right? And we are a platform that we want the donations and all that great stuff, but none of that happens if the fundraiser isn't taken care of. And I think that one of the things that you, Becky and Jonathan, just highlighted was so important is like, we automatically go into fixing mode. A lot of us too, especially as fundraisers, as leaders of these amazing nonprofits and organizations, we're like, okay, give me the shovel. Like, if I need
as parents,
if I need to be out here digging, our vice president of customer experience, Mark, used to work for Habitat for Humanity, and I'm like, if I was there, I'd be out in the field building the houses. I'd be in the office, like we'd be all over the place, right? So one of the things I want to talk about though is sometimes there is this dichotomy and discrepancy between investing in our people, right, and taking care of our people, and this idea of investing in overhead, right? And sometimes it's like, oh, well, we can't spend money on overhead. We can't a retreat. What you talking about? Like, so what are some ways if people feel like they're strapped in that area? What are some ways that organizations can still invest in their people? And then what are some ways that organization leaders and fundraisers can invest in themselves, right? That don't necessarily cost or don't necessarily take an abundant amount of resources.
Oh, Floyd, you are poking the bear going into the overhead myth.
This is a brave topic.
To step up on my soapbox. So, I mean, we literally just tackled the overhead myth and how damaging and harmful it is to the sector. And we just had that podcast episode. You're welcome to go to weareforgood.com and check that out. We actually took on that conversation with Floyd's BFF, Mallory Erickson, and we went all in full tilt. And I think one of the most important things that I want everybody to know about that is we have got to start dispelling that myth and talking about the harm that it creates. It leads to all of these things that we are talking about in terms of burnout. It plays into compensation and lead practices. There are racism tenets and gender inequalities that come with it. And we think that this is just a baseline thing. And our board members feel very proud that they think that they know what the overhead myth is. But we're saying we got to dive into that and unwind it, because it is creating systems and inequity that do not and will not ever allow us to thrive. So stepping back down, somebody else.
I want to just chime in here, if it's okay, with some of those kind of no-cost cultural things that you can add to your organization that will help people feel seen, loved, and supported and valued. And a lot of these I am taking from an organization, City Leadership in Memphis, Tennessee. I worked for them for a couple of years, and boy, do they do it right. It was the first time. As a matter of fact, they did it so right, you guys. I felt weird being there because I was so used to being like praised for staying late and like going the extra mile and all in for the cause. And they were like, you should go home, honey. It'll be here tomorrow. They had really good like Slack off days, no Slack days, where no one's instant messaging other team members, and it allows you to really do deep focus work. They fed us twice a month. They just ordered lunch in, and you just go in there and you get your lunch and don't have to worry about it. We had twice a month a time called Cocktails and Conversations, and it's where we did not talk about work. We all just gathered and we had time to unwind together. And out of that time came a lot of transparency and authenticity. Shout out to my manager who saw some stuff in me and was able to speak to that in love and made me feel really supported and kind of gave me some guardrails and helped me create boundaries. I know everybody's not so lucky to have that, but boy, I had that once in my life. And it makes me want to be that kind of person for my leaders, for my volunteers, for my donors. Just having her model that in my life was huge. The other thing that we did was they got everybody headphones. They gave us a budget to get us headphones. And so when the headphones were on, that means I'm not available. That means I can't have a quick come up.
Ooh,
That
I
means
love that, Nikki.
or, the headphones were huge. And it was just it was a kind of low cost way to say, we value deep work here. We value deep work here. So those are just some tips that cost nothing.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that, you just mentioned, the idea of like working from home, that kind of pinged. And by the way, y'all, we have some amazing pre-submitted questions, but feel free to use the Q&A as well to submit some other questions. But that really pinged the idea of work from home, right? And we're in this new culture of everybody's working from home and all that different stuff, which is amazing and great. But sometimes I've actually noticed that burnout is still going high. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you can actually do in your workspace? Because it seems like sometimes we're blending work into our daily life. We're blending and we're taking it home, literally taking it home with us. John, is that something that you can speak to?
I mean, I can speak to it, but I've got like massive imposter syndrome to it, But I think there's a lot in like the rituals in our life. And I feel like I kind of see the thread of that, of just like what becomes norm. And I do think like creating boundaries of like, this is for my kids, like there's certain things that happen before I come into the office for the day. And it's like, I'm checking out for the day, not that I'm not accessible, but I'm saying bye like I'm walking out the door, that there's just kind of like a difference of that. And to me, it helps them understand that I'm not just staring at a computer all day, because that'll come back to haunt you of like, you just look at your screen all day, but create that kind of natural segue for here. And then I just also think like working from home allows us, when we first had the pandemic happen, a lot of us, for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, we go walks in the neighborhood and we talk to people that we never got to see. And like all these kind of beautiful things happen in life. And it's cool that we can now like bake that into our day. And it's so healthy when we decide to push the Zoom call to a phone call and just say, hey, I can actually take this while walking around the block and enjoying the outside and being in nature and things that are helping to kind of rejuvenate our spirit. A lot of times we take our lunches and when we're going to define it, and we head out the door just to get some fresh air for the day too. And so I feel like some of those rituals that you bake in and model that are good and healthy for your families to see too, which I think is a whole benefit of getting to work from home if you got little ones running around that are watching you.
And I'll just add on to that, like there's a new study that came out, and sorry, I can't multitask it. If I can find it, I'll drop it into the chat, that has found that working from home does not decrease productivity. I saw that hit this week. So if you are working with a manager who is sort of in the scarcity mindset that we all know exists in nonprofit, that says, oh, I'm not sure I can trust my employees. Actually, they're finding the opposite. Not only does it not decrease productivity, it actually increases productivity. It increases retention. It increases the ability for people to have balance. So I really think if you're working from home, and I absolutely think you should advocate for that, even if it's a hybrid model in this new era. I mean, it used to be 1 in 48 before the pandemic. It's now 1 in 9. People are now working remotely. This is sort of the future in nonprofit. While we seem to be a little bit lagging behind for-profit, this is something where we can step into this and accelerate. But I think it's on us to create some boundaries around when we're going to be in the office and when we're going to be answering those phones. This can be very dangerous in nonprofit. We have guilt. We feel like we need to answer anytime a donor texts us, an administrator texts us, they need something. Put up your boundaries. I don't take any phone calls for work after 5 o'clock. I don't do text. John and Julie and I over in We Are for Good, we have a moratorium from 5 to 9. We are with our families. Unless we get, Dolly Parton on the podcast, we are not going to be talking to each other at this point.
Which,
so
if anybody knows,
boundaries.
Dolly.
Right.
Yeah. We love Dolly.
I wanted to add, Becky, if I could add to that, that was one of the things that they gave us at City Leadership, 1 day a week we had a flex schedule where we could choose to work from home or work anywhere in the city that energized us.
How
And
amazing
I'm
is
a
that?
coffee shop girl. I can get down
Yes, me too.
at a coffee shop. I love the vibes. I love the smell of the coffee in the air. It's my happy place. And so one day a week, I would go and I would do that coffee. I think the other thing in working from home that I learned in pandemic, because we were all in it, right? Like, I thought I was going to get housework done and do some other stuff while I was working. I'm trying to multitask and sneak in stuff. And I learned that it helps. So when I'm working, when there are work hours, focus on work. Just get it in, just get it out of the way. And then separate that other stuff, because what started happening is it all started to blend together. Right. And so my task list was all over the place because there's like work stuff and then like life stuff and then like home stuff. And I'm just trying to blaze through it. And it's like, no, sometimes it does help to compartmentalize and just focus on the work, get the work done. And then you know that once you get that done, you got the rest of the time to do whatever else you need to do.
Precisely. One thing that another person asked was the idea of how do you think that personal fundraiser fatigue and fundraiser burnout can contribute to donor fatigue, right? And I think that that kind of like goes up to the idea of like, a lot of people are worried about donor fatigue. Am I asking too much? Am I, is this overwhelming to my donors and whatnot? Do you see a sense of correlation in that?
100%. And I think the reason I love this moment so much that we're sitting in and we're experiencing this digital revolution, and we've moved from Web 1.0, of talking to our donors to Web 2.0. And it's like so quickly we're about to go into, Web 3.0. And so we're about to meet our donors in the metaverse. Like, it's just crazy what we're experiencing right now. But here's the thing: authenticity, vulnerability, build great human connections. And if you are in rote mode where you are doing things the way they've always been done and you're plowing through and you're not doing what Nikki talked about, you're not creating a culture of listening, of trying some things, then your donors are going to feel that. Absolutely. And I got to squat like in something that we're seeing that's really, really interesting about this. If you're watching Mackenzie Scott's gifts as closely as I'm watching Mackenzie Scott's gift, and we are, she is making these large contributions, not just on the healthiness of the financial integrity of the organization, but on the healthiness of the culture of the organization. She has a team that is doing due diligence to make sure that there is mental health, that there are healthy cultures, that the leader is leading with integrity. And that, so our funders, major funders, are looking for this balance. And if we don't start to lead with it in our own sectors, not only are we going to lose incredible talent, but we have the opportunity to lose really big dollars and people who want to be a part of vibrant cultures.
Becky, if I could just tag on here, I love that you said it. I love the route Mackenzie's going about it. I said her first name like we know each other. We don't.
I know, right?
But
I'm a
huge fan of her example of philanthropy. And I hope that other people are taking notice in the way that we are. But it is absolutely time to start holding organizations' feet to the fire around burnout and around the mental health of their workers. And I think I saw a quote that basically said, there's this workforce, the nonprofit workforce is working tirelessly every day for the sustainability of life and the world, right? But they're often not sustainable themselves. They often aren't compensated well. They often don't have the right benefits to get the care and the help that they need. And they just don't have the support. Sometimes a hoorah, we see you, is huge. In the life of somebody that's overwhelmed, overloaded, and just overworked. Like, just that sense of thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for the self-sacrifices that in this work, we make them, right? We just got to decrease making them. But yes, we need to start holding organizations' feet to the fire. And I think in the same way, I saw a poll that said that people that are looking for work are going to now start asking employers how they handle COVID and how they cared for their employees during COVID. And I think that if you're in the interview process or you're looking at a nonprofit org, it is wise to ask them, what are their mental health policies? What are they vacation days? What are the vacation days? And what are the policies around taking time off? You want to know these things before you jump in, right? Because when we jump in with whole hearts, right? And full compassion, and we're ready to go. So we just need for our orgs to protect us in this work.
I love
Okay,
that.
I got to give one pro tip, and I hope it's not a shameless plug. I hope it's a helpful plug, but this conversation is so timely. We have, again, 2 theme weeks that we drop on the podcast each year, and our theme week is happening next week, and it's on pay, power, equity, and leave, and nonprofit. And so if we are diving into how do you fight for better compensation? How do you fight for pay leave? How do you dispel power dynamics and major gifts and granting funders? We are going there. We have brought in amazing people. We're partnering with the Skim, who did this amazing Show Us Your Leave campaign. We've got scripts, we've got frameworks. And if this is something you really want to dive into to radically elevate your culture, we want everybody in, because we want a healthy culture to be normalized, and we want no more burnout, no more compassion fatigue. Let's do this.
I love, come on, somebody. What a note. What a note to end on. I love that. I love that. And I would just ask, for you both, just say one quick word. Someone asked a really great question. How do you know if you're burnt out or if you're just busy? And how do you know if it's something that you're coming in? I know it's something you guys talked a lot about. And I would say one word is awareness, right? Like making time for stillness. Remember in the beginning, I said, someone asked, how are you? What makes you happy? And I couldn't answer. That was a red flag. I didn't see it at a time as a red flag, but I didn't realize that not being able to have a word for that is a red flag, But is there any one quick thing that you guys would add to how do I know if I'm actually on the way to burnout?
Nikki, you want to go first?
I will. I'll go first. One of the ways that you know is you're highly withdrawn. You're highly withdrawn, and you're highly anxious. One of my 3 indicators was my eating habits, my sleeping habits, and my peak illness, right? So I kept getting colds, kept getting sinus infections, kept having aches and pains, kept having stomach aches, right? And I was like, I just never feel well. I just never feel good anymore. And that's a problem. Eating, sometimes I overeat, sometimes I wouldn't eat at all. But I noticed when my eating habits were off, that's usually a red flag. And then sleeping, right? I would sometimes be up and I wouldn't be working. My mind would just be so wired, I couldn't go to sleep. Like I just could not rest. But then there were weekends where when I did get some rest, I slept the whole weekend. So those extremes around that are those are 3 really big indicators.
That's good. You have any?
I would piggyback on that, and just say that my very first symptom that I thought something was wrong is the way that I explained it to my doctor was I feel like I've had 50 espressos when I lay down to go to bed, especially in my legs. And what I learned later is that is adrenaline powering, rushing through my body as my mind is powering. I would also say, if you do not find joy in things that you used to find joy in, you're probably working through some depression. And I think the last thing I would just do is I want to define the difference between burnout and compassion fatigue, because burnout comes from working conditions. That's what we're talking today in your environment. Compassion fatigue comes from PTSD and just having people that are in trauma all day in your life, but your body doesn't know the difference between compassion fatigue and burnout. So it's really important to just take note of where you are, find stillness. I love, Floyd, you talked about meditate. Meditate is great. Get a coach, get a therapist if you can. Check out your employee assistance programs within your nonprofit. So many of them offer that. It's free. Check those out. You are worthy of it. And gosh, guys, rooting for you. We've got you in this.
I love that. Y'all, can y'all say thank you to Becky and Nikki and Jonathan in the chat? This was so immensely helpful. I'm so grateful for you all. Taylor says a million thanks. Exactly. I feel the same way.
Love you, Taylor.
This has been so beneficial. And I hope that you all are taking something away that you can use for yourselves, that you can use for your coworkers, that you can use for your organizations, because that's our intention. We want to care for the fundraiser. Okay. Next month, we have an even even another awesome chat with Sabrina Walker Hernandez. We're talking all about boards, okay?
I love Sabrina.
I love her.
Right. How to build your board, how to build a strong board, how to get an active board to help you with fundraising. We're going to be talking about that and so much more. I know somebody asked a question about resources on the website. This is all going to be in the email. So we will tag all the resources. We'll tag Nikki's resource. We'll tag We Are for Good resources. And you'll be able to tap in that way. Okay. So grateful for you all. Thank you guys so much. And I hope that you guys have a continued blessed week. Be blessed, y'all. Thank you.
You turned this from an idea in a dorm room into the #1 rated fundraising platform on the internet.
You raised over $100 million for charitable causes just in the last year.
You are making the world a better place, one gift at a time.